Can you turn the music down?
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, let's see if I'm live here. Connecting. Oh, whoops! I forgot to change the titles. Yeah, that's pretty good. What should I call this? Okay. I'm live. Good morning, everybody. Just a sec. I'm still going live. Okay. So I have about maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes before we leave for IEM, and I'm all ready. I've already worked out, eaten breakfast, taken a shower, got dressed, prepped as much as I could possibly prep for the competition. So just wanted to go live and talk to you guys and get some comments and share some expectations I have for today. So this show is about essentially G2. So if you don't know right now, I'm at IEM Katowice, the IEM World Championships. We play today versus Unicorns of Love to qualify for the semis, where we would face, I believe, Rocks. I'm not really sure about the brackets at this point, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. We just have to win the game in front of us. That's the most important thing. And we've already lost to Flash Wolves and then beat Kongdu Monster to get here. So I've noticed a lot of conversation on Reddit recently and videos about progression of the West and the best way to do it, Korean imports, styles of training, etc. And this is something that I've put in a lot of work on and thought about since 2012 when I decided I wanted to this is 2013, I guess, when I decided I wanted to try to win the World Championships with a Western team. And I want to share something that I told TSM when I was working with them in 2016, which was that essentially the study of structure that I did on the Korean esports scene and the understanding I have of that kind of infrastructure they have in their team environment and their way of recruiting players and developing talent is essentially that it's not yet replicated in the West. Like the West is just really far behind in that infrastructure. I think that TSM 2016 was the first time, and Cloud9 2016 actually was the first time outside of Korea that something even approaching a Korean-style infrastructure had appeared in a League of Legends team. And now this is what people need to realize, is that once you duplicate the kind of environment that leads to the development of that level of consistent high performance and development of the game, then you actually have to catch up, right? So first of all, it's not even possible to improve. Let's imagine that everybody is improving in League at a steady rate, right, at a constant slope. So for example, teams nowadays would crush Samsung White. Like Samsung White, probably the best team in history at this point in terms of relative power difference between them and the competition. But if we look at right now, just objectively, the comparison of skill, they wouldn't stand a chance in the current, if they were just imported from the past. So essentially, everybody's always improving, right? So let's say that this is the rate of improvement of Korea because of their infrastructure, and this is the rate of improvement of the rest of the world. You see, the gap is not going to close, right? Once you actually get to a level of infrastructure, they're tapering off because the game is getting more and more solid, but actually it's not, right? Because it keeps changing. That's the beauty of League of Legends, is it keeps adapting and evolving, and because Riot keeps it updating it, essentially like the ability of infrastructure to keep up with the progress of the game is always going to be there. It's never going to like, it's not going to exponential curve like taper off as it's seen in most sports when you approach like the peak level of performance. It's like there's a steady climb. Now that's going to happen still in terms of team play, but not in terms of, you know, what is the meta, I would say. So essentially you can see like, okay, so we have a steady progress of a team whose infrastructure is built up, then you have like the steady progress of the other teams, right? So let's say you match Korea in terms of infrastructure and growth. Well, you have to be faster than them, right? You have to actually increase your slope even more to ever cross over to the other side. You see what I mean? So what I told TSM was like, okay, so now we've got to the point where we can duplicate their infrastructure and their growth capability, so we can like improve as fast as them. We actually have to improve faster than them to even catch up. That's not going to happen in 1 year. They're training more, and we actually need to train more than them in order to like even get a growth curve approaching what they do. Or we need a curve jump. We need to jump ahead of them in terms of meta, right? But then depending on like how it is that they're structured, like they're just going to catch up and supersede that, right? So I think that there's opportunity because the game is always wiped. Like the meta can just wipe out like Korean knowledge and all of a sudden put another region ahead if they figure it out first. But then that gives a more opportunity for like curve jumping. But then the infrastructure to actually develop that knowledge and keep iterating on it needs to be there. And by infrastructure, what I mean is that I want you to imagine a triangle, okay? And in Western esports, the players are the base of the triangle. Then on top of that, you have the support staff and the coaching staff. And then on top of that, you have the management and the marketing. And then on top of that, you have the owner, or the org, basically. Okay, Korea operates the other way around. Okay, on the bottom, you have the org and the infrastructure. Then you have the coaching staff, which is a fully developed developmental unit where you have people graduating into it and being mentored throughout in a consistent way, right? Not like try them out for a split, dump them, get somebody else with a Twitter following. Try them out for a split, dump them, get somebody else with a Twitter following, like that. Then you have the player base. Now remember that Korea has been using farming houses since 2012 in League of Legends. So they've had like, I don't know if you remember like Gamsu and Spirit on Fnatic, like they came from the same farming house, right? That's how they knew each other before they went to Fnatic. So there's a pool of 10 to 12 like top level players who are recruited into an org, because orgs in Korea are talent agencies. Okay, they seek out talent all the time. They bring them in. They start cultivating them within their infrastructure with their assistant coaches who are being trained to be, better coaches, and those players are being mentored. And then that talent then rises, and then at the peak of the pyramid, you have the A team of the org, right? So this is the absolute fundamental opposite of, if you can imagine, the way I described it, every single other Western team in terms of like how the org is structured. So what happens is you have like a mass exodus to China, and then the talent just duplicates. Because it wasn't that Korea's success was built on the top of the players, it was that it was built on the top of the ability to develop players. It doesn't matter if everybody leaves, they can just get other world-class players because it's coming upwards, right? So I know that I've been saying this for like 5 years. This is what I've been saying in all of my content. This is what I've been trying to teach brands. This is what I've been trying to teach orgs. This is what I've been trying to teach YouTube. But I just want to reiterate it now because it's still true, and it's still more true than ever today as Korean infrastructure gets even stronger. The nice thing is that I made a video in 2014 about CLG's kind of like advancements in infrastructure, which as you can see have been taking effect for the last year and a half. And TSM, who by the way copied them fantastically. So the video basically said that like fast following works. And the nice thing about fast following is that the US sports infrastructure is really good at fast following. They just they have no ego in terms of like what works a lot of the times because it's very science-based. They just take whatever is the best like approach in the world, and they just use it a lot of the time because it's very market based. Like you just lose if you don't do the best stuff. That's a lot of the reason that like China is very similar to that in terms of like tackling the Olympics. They have a lot of tradition built into their approach to sport, but they're also very pragmatic, I would say, in terms of adopting techniques that are just whatever works, and they adopt the most cutting edge techniques and they just do it because they want to win. There are sport like ecosystems and cultures that I've noticed around the world as I've lived around the world that are not very pragmatic. I would say like there's a lot of running cultures. Like I noticed the Finnish running culture is very like kind of traditional in the way that they train. Maybe the cross-country ski culture even a little bit, not very pragmatic about training techniques, kind of keep a hold of tradition. Ice hockey for sure, where they just like kind of do what they always did because they believe it's what makes them the best, instead of being very, very pragmatic about like new techniques of training. So this isn't like a cultural thing that you can find along national ideological boundaries. It's more about like sports. There are sports in the US that are incredibly tradition bound and can't advance very fast, and there are sports that are just 100% pragmatic. Whatever works, and we do it. So I think that esport, because it's new and it doesn't have a lot of traditions, will be very pragmatic in the West. And as soon as they have the money and the actual volume of people who are qualified to be working in these positions, they're going to duplicate essentially what Korea's doing and maybe even jump past them, because all of this NBA knowledge is like coming in to the scene about like how to structure a sport org. And right now I think they're being very hands-off, but I made a video recently about how I'm really annoyed with all the orgs who are sport-centric coming in and not being hands-on about creating a high-performance environment. Like Rick Fox is really hands-on about creating a high-performance environment. You know, and he's trying to bring in the principles of performance, you know, like having a structured environment, mixing in like optimization in all areas of life, watching lots of tape, visualization, these kinds of things that are like consistent ways of tackling performance from all across the board in terms of like a position's growth. And of course having a B team that they can scrim against, and then having position coaches. So I'm not really sure if they have position coaches or how they're using them. Probably not as effectively as we were doing in TSM, but I think that that's just because maybe they don't have the greatest sports management there. I'm not really sure. I haven't been inside Echo Fox. Just what I see from the outside. Okay, so I just wanted to rant a little bit about like expectations versus reality, because last year I don't think EU was a very strong region, and I think EU fans had a lot of expectations for them going to Worlds, and there is a big difference. Now everybody listen really carefully. Listen really carefully. There's a difference between choking and not being good enough. Okay? Not being good is not the same as choking. Don't imagine that like you can perform at one level and then like, I get this question a lot. I get people who say like, I know that I can do it. How can I like, you know, beat somebody who's better than me? You can't beat somebody who's better than you. They're better than you. You're not choking when you lose to them. You're just worse. Okay? So choking is when you have a regular skill that you can typically perform, and it's something that you can do automatically, and then you have an interruption of the automatic process that usually comes from anxiety, and all of a sudden you overthink it and your skill level drops in comparison to normal. Now that didn't happen to the EU that I saw at Worlds. What I saw was that EU was just kind of as a region throughout the second split of 2016, in my opinion, a little bit behind the global meta in terms of macro and infrastructure. I think it's actually the opposite at the beginning of this split. At the beginning of this split, I was watching North America and I was watching EU, and I think that EU had a big wake-up call, and I think that EU was progressing a little bit ahead of the global meta in terms of EU NA. Obviously, Korea and LMS and LPL are kind of like in their own metas, but I think that as far as like the EU NA comparison, I think EU was like slightly ahead as opposed to last year when NA was slightly ahead. So this is kind of going back and forth, but the expectations versus reality is like the teams are pretty much just as good as they're good. And when they get on the international stage, there's all this talk about like underperforming or choking or not showing up, but like in actuality, it's just a litmus test. It's just a test to show you exactly where everybody stands. And exactly where everybody stands is exactly where they're ranking. And the sooner that you guys accept that, the sooner that we as a region can get around to the process of improving so that we can actually be better than other teams and not have this narrative of like, oh, they underperformed or they choked when they got on the big stage or all this kind of nonsense, which is just like, no, we just need to grind it out and become better, right? And we're in the process of doing that. I think as an EU region, NA kind of decided that last year when they dumped tons of money into the Cloud9's like Reaper setup, which is like phenomenal. I made a video about how essentially I predict them to do really well this split because they retained their coaching staff. Make sure to check that out. And I think TSM as well, because they retained a lot of the like key elements of the infrastructure that were part of the growth of the team, right? And more important, the coaching philosophy that went into that. Okay, so expectations for reality, guys. You can have whatever expectations you want. You can layer them on whoever you want. But then at the end, when the results are there, I want you to just accept reality that like, if G2 can poop all over EU and then we can't take it home today and tomorrow, that's just where we rank in the world. So we're going to do our best to like prove that EU is ahead of the world, but yeah, it's going to be a harsh reality when or a wonderful reality at the end of the tournament. Okay. Personally, I believe my guys can do it. Like, just watching the team, my personal belief, like, I think the fact that G2 and Carlos like kept the roster and these guys stuck together, I want you to understand that like the personal psychology they have of sticking together just shows straight up that they had something to prove, right? Let's say you have a group of guys and they lose something horrible, like a world tournament, and then they all stick together. What does that say to you about their group mentality? It says like, we're not finished. We feel like there was something we wanted to accomplish together that we haven't yet, and we want to prove that this group, that this unit has what it takes. That's a pretty fierce like level of motivation. And motivation like is something that you can apply over time to increase your curve of growth. And so I think that like this team, when I came in in mid-January and they were like, okay, we need to get mentally tough, they were already doing it. They were already done with it. Like they'd already decided. Like mental toughness is a binary decision, you guys. It's like you're there and you're like, oh, I have this emotional state, blah, 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 it's going to interfere with my performance. And then you just make a decision. You're like, no, it's not. Or I'm too wimpy and weak and kind of like can't put my values in front of my short-term pain, emotional pain, to pull it off. And I don't mean like wimpy and weak, like as in how it sounded, wimpy and weak. I should take that back. What I mean is like, if you're willing to withstand short-term emotional pain for long-term values, you can be seen as having mental resilience, and a lot of times that's a binary decision to just say, I will swallow this mistake that I made, I will swallow my teammates' irritation, and I will focus on behaviors right now that will impact my long-term growth. They were already doing that. And I think that that was because they have this drive to improve. Okay, so I also wanted to touch on, before we go, I have about 10 minutes left, the thoughts I made in a recent video on YouTube, which you can check out my last one, about mid-game and late-game training, so 20 to 40-minute training versus 0 to 20-minute training versus early game, and key instincts for winning. So I have a lot of data from scrimmages. I've been coaching now professionally for almost 2 years, and I have a lot of information about like scrimmages versus stage performance versus winning in League of Legends. And I've noticed that teams with the best trans composition principles, that is, compositions that apply to the game theoretically as a game, as a MOBA, like from composition to composition to composition, the people that master those principles cannot lose games. They just can't. Doesn't matter what composition they draft. This is why Samsung Galaxy White was so brilliant. It didn't really seem to matter what composition they draft. Not only were they better at the actual champions, but they were actually better at just the core principles of the game, where to be when. Okay, so looking at the teams that we scrimmed at Worlds, looking at the scrimmages that all the major tournaments that I've been in, and then the results on stage, what I see over and over and over again is that if the team with the better principles from 20 to 40 can enter that phase of the game with anything from a 3K to a 0K deficit or advantage, that they can win. And the only thing that matters is like closing out the game, the 1 or 2 or 3 plays that you use to obtain victory. So I want you to think of the early game as like a banking system, where if you draft a composition that is all in on the early game, that's kind of like what bad teams should do against good teams, right? They should all in on a phase of the game in their composition, because that's the only way you're going to beat a good team, is by like all inning on a certain phase of the composition and getting a very, very like imbalanced comp. But most of the good teams, what they're going to do is draft a balanced comp that can obtain victory, or like at least not fall behind too much in different phases of the game. And then they will all be like more or less similar in the mid game in terms of power level and team fighting capability and engagement, or not engagement, and just, you know, you have different principles if you don't have engage, which usually revolve around vision and playing into your vision. If you do have engage, you can play into their vision. Okay, so these are like the trans composition principles. You have one comp, it functions this way, you have another comp, it functions this way, but they all do, right? So when I say trans comp, I don't mean like from a non-engaged comp to an engaged comp, or a non-tank comp to a tank comp. I mean from all comps that have one engage that needs to be flanking. All comps that have one engage that needs to fight front to front. All comps that don't have any engage and need you to play, the enemy to play into their vision. Right, so they have to basically be able to obtain vision control through pressure in the lanes, or through sacking a lane to obtain momentary vision control, and then like use an objective to actually draw the team in, of which there is really only one, which is Baron. Right, so like this is how these principles of like how to execute in the mid game are the things that actually win you the game in 1 or 2 plays. So those are the most important factors of training, because once again I want to remind you, we have a zero-sum training system. So we have a limited amount of time. There's an infinite amount of things to train. The things that you choose to train are like a choose-your-own-adventure book, and at the end, you're good enough to like beat a world champion team, or you're not. And so choosing the right things to train is like the big question. Like, what is it? Koma on SKT is the best person in the world at answering that question. And there are a number of other coaches who are very excellent at answering it. And I think that like as observation and scouting, you know, kind of like gets really higher level, as people understand that it's about game theory and not about, you know, League of Legends theory, that number is going to go higher. Okay, I think that's basically what I wanted to talk about. Let me see if there's any questions in the Discord. No. No questions in the Discord. Okay. Then I will see about chat. Let me open a browser and see if people are watching on Twitch. I have to check my chat, you guys. I try not to have on like the stream when I'm also streaming, because my computer's like kind of bad at it. You know, I didn't confirm that I actually had audio and stuff when I was streaming. Hopefully it's actually working. Oh, I can't see the past chat in Twitch. That's so funny. Yeah, I forgot. When you loaded Twitch, it doesn't like show you the chat from the entire history. So, hi. I'll go to YouTube instead. Maybe there it will show it. I'm not a Twitch partnered streamer, so I don't have to stream only on Twitch. I can actually stream on YouTube as well. How do I see my live stream? Hi, yes, I am reading chat. How do I pop this out? Let me pop it out. Pop out chat. Okay, now let me pause this there. Okay. I have YouTube chat now. So What questions do you guys have? Oh, my brother's here. Hi, Carl. Table tennis is very pragmatic. As the meta has shifted, over the years, everyone has moved to the handshake grip. Is there a constraint in how well the Western regions can build up their infrastructure due to the lack of profit the teams are making? No, there isn't, because profit has nothing to do with future revenue potential. And there are teams out there that want to build brands more than they want to make revenue, because they have the ability to cultivate revenue in their brand. So what they want to do is build brand, which means they can invest in a loss lead in esports. Why do I look like Billy Mays? I don't know. Why do you think there are older pros in CSGO? Because CSGO is an older game. So people started years ago, and then they realized, oh, I can keep playing this. And as the money increased, they realized, oh, I can keep playing this. Same thing's going to happen in League. I don't know why people don't think it's not going to happen. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, people started when they started, and the people who became pros are the people with the most free time, i.e. teenagers, and they don't want to quit as the money goes high. There are 24-year-old pros now who started when they were 16. So why would they leave? Like, High and Lemon even came back because they realized, oh, we're not bad. We're not getting beat out. Like, there's only as fast as you can react. That's as fast as humans can react, and that reaction speed stays with you till your late 40s, right? So visual reaction speed is trained. Actual reflex speed is like genetic, partly, mostly not, mostly just normal across the population, and based on diet. And yeah, that's it. That's it. So as long as the money's there, as long as people can structure their lives around pursuing a craft like, League of Legends, then they're just going to age up. Infrastructure is important, but isn't it just a mental fundamental problem that everybody's thinking automatically unless LPL players are better in general? No, they're just better. Like, sport is objective, you guys. If a team wins, it's because they're a better team. Maybe they're not a better team tomorrow or yesterday, but they were a better team at that moment. So if they're a better team at that moment, that means the gap is not as big as you want, right? If you win a game, you're better. If you lose a game, you're worse. Business is subjective. Like, Facebook versus Instagram, which one's better? Or like, this vitamin water versus this vitamin water. It's taste. I don't know. Sport is objective. There's a winner and a loser. The better team wins, period. You could say, oh, no, this team is better. They just made a mistake. That makes them a worse team. Oh, no, this team's better. They just choked. That makes them a worse team. Let me give you a good example, an extreme example. Remember the second game of Unicorns of Love versus G2, when Unicorns of Love was one hit away from killing Nex and G2 won? It was like, oh, so lucky. Sure. But then there's this component of, like, how do you last that long against a team that has such a big lead to get to the point where you can ace them at the Nexus and then go back and win? It's because you are better at holding out until the last possible minute and not surviving, and like having a plan and being cool-headed when they're approaching the Nexus. And Unicorns panicked when they approached the Nexus, and they didn't wait and they didn't do it right. So they were a worse team. And you could say, like, well, they're a better team for like 99% of the game. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier about how there's only one play that matters. It's the one that wins you the game. You can be as good as you want from 0 to 20. If you can't get a good enough lead and you don't know the plays and execute on them well, 20 to 40 to win the game, then the other team's just going to take it every time. Asia is a better region. No, teams are better. There are teams that are better in Asia. TSM were making smart macro plays in Rome, so I was separating from run-of-the-mill teams last year. You can't put LCK in the same barrel as LPL and MLS. I can put them in the same barrel if I haven't watched. Like, I've watched like SKT and KT games, but I haven't watched any of the rest of LCK or LPL or LMS. So they're the same barrel as me, outside of SKT and KT, just because I haven't seen them. Right? So that's the barrel I'm putting them in, the Weldon hasn't watched them barrel, not the like same skill level barrel. IEM pre-shows today? IEM pre-shows right now. It's not a mental barrier. There's no such thing as a mental barrier. Wait, the second game against Samsung, we lost quite heavily? Were we watching the same game? from 0 to 22 minutes, we were massacring them. And then they had better 20 to 40 game, just 20 to 40 minute decision making. How would I compare Double and Sven if I didn't see it before? Also, which player is important in the bot lane of the team's success support? Peter and Jesper, Doublelift and Sven are really, really excellent AD carries. World class, both of them. How do you think the major regions would be right now if no imports were allowed? LCK, EU, China. I don't know the difference between LMS and LPL. I never remember which one is Hong Kong and which one is like mainland. NA, LAS, maybe CIS, LAS. How do I like Poland? It's awesome. How often do you get to converse with coaches and members of countries' infrastructure, Korea, China, if at all? At international tournaments? Pretty decently amount, but not as much. I mean, not about meat, just like niceties, not actual meat. So I tried to build a coach development group in NA. Nobody was interested because they're all like scared and terrified, and they're like, protect my turf, and no, I don't want to talk to you, and ego, blah, 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 blah. So it didn't work, which is stupid because how are you going to beat other regions if you don't develop internally? So I'm trying the same thing in EU, and it looks like it's going to work because people here are sick of losing. So we're sick of losing players to other regions. We're sick of losing games and matches to other regions. How often, when Greece won the European Championship, everybody said they were so lucky. Correct. Okay, there's luck of sport, all right? There is the luck of sport, and some games have more luck of sport in them than other games, but the way that league tournaments are structured now removes almost all luck. I mean, seriously. You know how many best of series we play? Like, fans hate luck in esport. They want to see the best team win. Used to be we had tournaments that were predicated a lot more on luck. Nowadays, not so much. So, like, it could be, you could see it as lucky that Greece was a better team that day in that game, and that they did the right things. Regardless, they made the right decisions. They did the right moves, right? So you could say that it was lucky that they made the right moves, but they actually did them and they were good enough to do them. So you have to be good enough. The fact that you luckily trained the right stuff doesn't take away the fact that you actually trained the right stuff for that day. Got it? Okay. Do I think Collegiate League will be mainstream within the next decade? Absolutely 100% yes. Weldon, I have anxiety to play ranked games. I think I have the potential and knowledge to climb, but I don't know what it is. You could say I'm mentally not as prepared as I thought. Royal Turk, please go to leaguecoaching.gg and find a coach who advertises like somebody you can duo with, or somebody who can like coach you in ranked and just like take your mind off of it, off the anxiety, and work on systems. If you take your mind off the performance and you work on improvement, instead of the evaluation of your skill, which is ranked, if you work on the pressure of ranked helping you to succeed. So the pressure of ranked helping you to improve through a system, and you see failure as growth, then you'll do a lot better. Who will win IEM? Obviously G2. Oh yeah, LS has a 1-hour video about ranked anxiety. I haven't watched it. But how should you set up runes? Copy pros or add something better for your playstyle? You should, in solo queue, if you're not challenger level, you should do one-trick style runes. You should not try to do balanced like professional level runes. You should just like go all in on some cheese strategy. This is the best way to win most games, all the way up to like mid-plat. Well done, I'm a sports management student studying in the UK and wanting to get into esports. How is the best to do it? Start creating content about your specialty. Start learning in the open. Document your learning. Document your thoughts out in the open, recommendations, and then do it about a particular brand and send them your content. Be like, hey, I did this thing. I made this org chart for you. I made this week schedule for you. I made this like brand planner thing for you. I made this I made this for your brand. This is how you should do it. And just do that over and over again for free, in public. You know, put it out on YouTube, but then send them the link, that kind of stuff. That's how you do it. Do other regions' coaches collaborate together the way you're trying to establish in youth? This is what I've been trying to tell people. LCK has a weekly coaches meeting. For 4 years. There's all these brain-dead people out there saying like, oh, other regions are catching up. Like, no, you don't even have the basis of fundamental sports infrastructure that most other sports in the world have, and that has been happening in StarCraft 2 and Brood War and League for like the last 6 years. No. They have a weekly coaches meeting, and they have mentorship and coach development within their orgs, within their top orgs. There's like a clear career trajectory from like pro player to assistant coach to like coach to like team manager, team like coach manager. Okay guys, I gotta go. Wish us luck. Ciao.